These are some comments on a very interesting article. Uh, Genetic signature common to all Native Americans is discovered. Agencia FAPESP. This is the link. And again, genetic signature common to all Native Americans is discovered. Scientists discovered evidence of natural selection in a certain type of gene found not only in an Arctic population. This is an Arctic population high up in Siberia, which I also call Upper Yenisei River entry or Nova Zembla entry. From there, in my hypothesis, the Amarins came in, coming amongst others from the Mackenzie River mouth, crossing roughly 3,000 kilometers of Arctic ice, but a site, for the most part, a site of land. So that's to locate where this Arctic population is located, they will be talking about. The discovery suggests a single adaptive event in a common ancestral population. So they are talking ancestral of a group, and that includes the Amarins. And that should have occurred before the range expansion of the first Americans over North and South America. So for me, this is all to do with the Amazon forest. So the single adaptive event in a common ancestral population, for me, these are the Amazon Amarins. And for consensus, this will be a population that will enter and populate the Americans. So I go further. This has to do with the gene for a fatty acid, a type of enzyme required for the digestion of food rich in unsaturated fat. And consensus will think about, already thought about Eskimos, because they need this gene to digest unsaturated fats from seal and whale consumed by the Inuit. But all Amarins have it, so not all Amarins consume seal and whale. It's discovered in 2015. The authors of a former study, not this one, compared the Inuit genome only with the DNA of Chinese and European people. So they ignored Native Americans. So of course they could not give important information or about the Native Americans. In this study, that I showed the title, the authors compare Native American genome with the genomes of Africans, Europeans, and Asians to see what is typical for the Native American genome. So they found a number of genes. So out of this comparison, the conclusion was made that Inuit and all Native Americans are descendants of the same ancestral population. Again, for consensus, they think about something, a population in Eurasia or Asia, or in Beringia. And I think about the Amazon Amarins, which fits in my hypothesis. And in the former videos, I showed you that the blood group O, the 100% blood group O amongst Amarins is a proof they are the ancestral population. And they live in the Amazon forest, lived and live. So they test if it was a result of a random genetic process, a mutation, but this is a very complex gene. So for me, this is already difficult to believe that it's random, especially in a short period of time, like consensus claims, because for consensus, it all has to be after the out of Africans came out of Africa. And So, not to my surprise, the evidence points to a natural selection event, which of course happened in the Amazon forest because they live there for millions of years, which I will argue and prove later on. But right now, this is the conclusion. It was a natural selection event. Natural selection, of course, takes some time. So, consensus think that there was a pressure for the Inuits to develop this gene or to develop this gene in Beringia because of the lipid consumption of whales and seals, etc. But I claim, uh, for consensus, the Amazon emeralds are hunter-gatherers, so they eat fat. They don't have a carbohydrate diet. And for me, they live from uh, enriched agroforests. So they do consume carbohydrates, starches from this enriched agroforest, but they also have they fast. I will show this later, and this fasting has benefits. After all, the Amazon Amarins have exceptional brain and heart health, which is very surprisingly for actual science. Um, so while they fast, they burn, consume their own fat. That's typically for fasting. The individual enters in ketosis and will burn its own fat. Um, it's typical for shamanic persons to fast. For whatever reason, it's typical for, but it also is typical for the tribes as a whole. So they enter in ketosis and they burn their own fat. So they need this gene for to digest their own fat during fasting, during ketosis. So, but consensus and researchers feel that pressure too try to fit it in out of Africa.